Did you ever wonder why, after all the fire you've walked through, you're still standing? Why, despite every attempt to break you, bury you, and silence you, you're still breathing, still rising? Let me tell you something that might shock you, something heaven has been waiting to confirm in your spirit. You were never ordinary. You were set apart before you even knew your own name. God chose you. That's why they couldn't touch you. This isn't about luck. It's not about being smart or playing your cards right. It's deeper than that. This is divine. There's a seal on your life. From the very beginning, there was a mark placed on you in the spirit. And even when you couldn't see it, the enemy could. That's why the warfare came early. That's why you were misunderstood, mistreated, left out, lied on, and labeled as the outcast. Because the moment your soul came into this world, darkness felt the shift, and it tried everything to put out your light. You've probably asked yourself, why did I have to go through so much? Why didn't anyone protect me when I was vulnerable? Why was I the one who got betrayed by the people I trusted most? Why was I the one who carried the weight of rejection while others were accepted with ease? Let me speak to that pain. Let me touch that place that still aches in silence when the world isn't watching. It wasn't because you were weak. It wasn't because you were forgotten. It was because heaven had an assignment on your life that hell tried to abort. You were set apart. And being set apart doesn't mean being wrapped in comfort. It means being forged in fire, shaped in silence, and prepared in isolation. Many of you were hidden in plain sight. You were in the room but never fully seen. You gave your heart to people who didn't understand the value of your spirit. You showed up for people who never showed up for you. And still, with all the betrayal, the abandonment, and the loss, they couldn't destroy you. They couldn't finish what they started because God placed a limit on how far they could go. Yes, they tried to wound you. Yes, they sent attacks. Yes, they whispered lies about your name, but they couldn't touch the core of who you are. Your anointing was off limits. There's something sacred about your journey. You were never meant to fit in. You were never called to blend. You were always different. And that difference is not your flaw, it's your divine fingerprint. The pain you carry, the scars you hide, they are not evidence of defeat. They are evidence that you were chosen to endure what others would have collapsed under. You see, the reason they couldn't touch you is because God had already claimed you. You were His before the foundation of the world. You were His when the trauma came. You were His when you cried yourself to sleep. You were His when you questioned if you had the strength to keep going, and you're still His now. Nothing you've been through has changed your identity. In fact, it only revealed it. And if we're honest, some of the deepest wounds didn't come from strangers. They came from those closest to us. The people you thought would cover you were the ones who exposed you. The ones who should have protected you became your accusers. But even then, even in the betrayal, God's hand never left your life. Even when you walked through valleys so dark, you could barely breathe, something in you refused to die. That's what makes you different. You weren't just fighting for survival. You were being shaped for purpose. Every hardship, every delay, every closed door, it was molding something in you that couldn't be faked. You carry an authenticity that can't be manufactured, a resilience born not from comfort, but from crushing. And yet you still walk with grace. You still love. You still believe. That's not weakness. That's supernatural strength. Some people looked at your life and thought they could take you down. They didn't understand that you weren't standing by your own power. You were upheld by the same force that holds the stars in place. You were anchored by God's promises, even when your reality didn't make sense. And now the tables are turning. You can feel it, can't you? Something's shifting. There's a stirring in your spirit. It's subtle but powerful. You're not the same person who entered the fire. You've come out refined, stronger, clearer, unshakable. Because the battles you've faced didn't weaken you. They awakened you. God allowed the affliction, but He never allowed destruction. He permitted the pressure, but He preserved your promise. There were moments you thought, this is it. I'm not going to make it out this time. But heaven had already spoken over your life. Touch not my anointed. And that word overrode every plan of the enemy. That's why the trap didn't work. That's why the slander didn't stick. That's why the curse turned into a blessing. Because you are a walking contradiction to what was supposed to happen to you. You were supposed to lose your mind. You were supposed to give up. You were supposed to drown in depression, bury yourself in shame, give in to bitterness, and never rise again. But here you are, still breathing, still rising, still chosen. Don't let the silence of your current season fool you. This is not the end. This is the calm before the breakthrough. God is preparing a display. He's about to show everyone, every doubter, every accuser, every spirit that mocked you, that His hand has always been on your life. The proof is not in your perfection. The proof is in your preservation. And if no one else has told you this lately, let me speak it plainly. You are not crazy. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not behind. You are not cursed. You are not forgotten. You are favored. You are covered. You are divinely assigned. The very things that should have destroyed you were the instruments God used to distinguish you. Every tear you cried watered the soil of your destiny. Every loss you endured made room for something greater. And now you're walking into the season where the pain starts to make sense. You weren't set aside, you were set apart. That's why they couldn't touch you. There's a reason you've been through so many battles most people never even knew you were fighting. You showed up with a smile while carrying wounds no one could see. You walked into rooms where spirits rose against you, where envy stared you down, where judgment whispered behind your back, and yet you walked with your head high, not because life was easy, but because something greater was holding you up. Let's tell the truth. The warfare on your life hasn't been normal. This wasn't just bad luck or coincidence. These were spiritual attacks. Dark forces saw your destiny before you did. They sensed the oil on your life, and they did everything in their power to break you before you could break through. And still, despite all their efforts, they failed. You were battling things no one could see. Thoughts that tried to bury your confidence. Emotional storms that came out of nowhere. Relationships that drained you of your energy, leaving you doubting your worth. And somehow, you survived it all. Not because you had it all figured out, but because God was fighting battles behind the scenes. Chosen ones don't get easy paths. They get fire, they get pressure, they get spiritual ambushes in the midnight hour, but they also get divine protection. You didn't just walk through the fire, you walked through it without being consumed. You didn't just endure heartbreak, you gained wisdom. You didn't just lose things, you learned what was never meant to stay. That's the mark of someone set apart. And hear me clearly, God saw everything. He saw the betrayals you had to pretend didn't hurt. He saw the nights you stared at the ceiling, questioning your worth, your path, your purpose. He saw the ones who used your kindness, who tried to twist your light into something shameful. God saw it all, and He took notes. You weren't forgotten. You were watched over with precision. Every tear you cried was collected. Every prayer you whispered was heard. Every injustice you suffered did not go unseen. And now heaven is moving. Now the tables are turning. Now your enemies are starting to tremble, not because of what you said, but because of what's coming. Because they thought you were weak. They saw your silence as surrender, but what they didn't know is that while they were laughing, you were growing. While they were mocking, you were maturing. While they were plotting, you were being positioned. And now you're about to rise, not as a victim, but as a vessel of divine power. There is something terrifying to darkness about a chosen one who knows who they are. Because once you realize the power you carry, you become unstoppable. Not arrogant, not prideful, but rooted. Rooted in purpose, rooted in identity, rooted in a truth that can't be shaken by opinions or circumstances. That's who you are now. You've been through spiritual warfare that would have crushed someone else. You've had moments where your mind was under siege, Attacks so fierce you didn't know if you'd make it out sane. But here you are, not only surviving, but awakening, not only healing, but evolving. Because that pain didn't just hurt you, it trained you. That rejection didn't just scar you, it shaped you. There were times you thought God had abandoned you, times when your prayers seemed to echo back in silence. But now you can look back and see, His silence wasn't absence, it was strategy. He was hiding you while He worked on you. Because if you had been elevated before you were ready, you would have fumbled your favor trying to prove your worth to people who were never meant to be part of your future. God was protecting you from premature exposure. He knew the weight of what you were called to carry. He knew the resistance that would come with your rising. So He let you face the storm early, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Every fight was for your future. Every battle taught you discernment. Every delay built your endurance. Now the enemy is panicking, because the same person they tried to bury is now standing in authority. You don't need validation anymore. You're not chasing approval. You're walking in clarity. You know who you are, and more importantly, you know who you're not. You're not the failure they tried to label you as. You're not the outcast they pushed aside. You're not the broken version of yourself that trauma tried to define. You are chosen, you are covered, and you are rising. There's a holy fire in you now, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that refines, the kind that makes demons flee, the kind that makes old habits fall off, the kind that silences every voice that ever told you you weren't smart enough. And listen, your enemies can feel it. That's why the attacks have gotten more subtle, more manipulative. That's why people from your past are suddenly reaching out. That's why distractions are showing up dressed as opportunities. Because the closer you get to your breakthrough, the more hell throws at you. Not because you're cursed, but because you're chosen. The pressure is a sign. You're right at the edge of something massive. They couldn't touch you back then, and they still can't touch you now. Oh, they tried. They sent word curses. They tried to sabotage your name. They smiled in your face while harboring jealousy in their hearts. But none of it worked. Why? Because your life is not built on human approval. It's built on divine authority. Every weapon they formed failed. Every trap they set collapsed. Every lie they told exposed. And now the scales are tipping. God is making it public. The same mouths that tried to discredit you will have to witness your elevation. The same hands that threw bituminous stones will have to watch you walk in favor. And they won't be able to stop it. Because it's not by your might. It's not by your power. It's by His Spirit. So stand tall, lift your head, wipe your tears. You didn't come this far to stop now. You've been preserved for such a time as this. You're not just rising, you're becoming who you were always meant to be. Not the version shaped by trauma, but the version refined by fire. The healed version, the whole version, the fearless version. And as you rise, don't look back in bitterness. Look back in awe, because everything that tried to break you was actually building you. Every no that hurt was a redirection towards something sacred. Every loss was an exchange. Heaven was removing what couldn't go where you're headed. So don't be surprised when doors start opening. Don't be shocked when favor starts finding you. This is the moment your enemies feared. This is the moment your ancestors prayed for. This is the moment your soul has been preparing for in silence. You were never unworthy. You were always marked. That's why they couldn't touch you. Let me speak this over you right now. God is about to make an open show of what He's done in secret. The restoration, the healing, the victories you earned in silence. He's about to bring it all to the light. Not to humiliate your enemies, but to vindicate you publicly. For too long, you've been hidden. For too long, your goodness was overlooked, your loyalty questioned, your name dragged through the mud. But the hour is coming where those who doubted you will have no choice but to witness the glory of God rise upon your life. You see, when God sets someone apart, it's not for comfort, it's for impact. And impact often requires pain. Pain that teaches you discernment, pain that exposes what's fake. pain that strips away everything that isn't built on truth. That's why you were never allowed to stay too long in toxic places. That's why he closed doors you begged him to keep open, because he was more concerned with your becoming than your comfort. You've been in the shadows long enough. You've been in the wilderness long enough. And now the divine reversal has begun. What was once used to humiliate you will now be the very place of your celebration. Where you were shamed, you will be honored. Where you were cast out, you will be called forth. This isn't just a comeback, it's a divine reintroduction. And this time, they won't be able to ignore you. But let me be clear, this isn't about ego. This isn't about getting back at anyone. This is about alignment. What was once out of balance in your life, your relationships, your purpose, your identity, is being corrected by heaven's hand. Justice is not revenge. It's restoration. It's God putting everything back in order exactly how it should have been from the beginning. And that includes your peace, your name, your position. For many of you, your silence was mistaken for defeat. But your silence wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. You didn't respond to every attack, not because you couldn't, but because you were being led by something higher. You let God fight for you. You turned your cheek when they expected you to curse them. You took the high road when the low road would have been easier. And now God is about to reward you, not just in private, but in front of those who tried to destroy you. Understand this, you're not walking into this next season empty-handed. You're walking in with scars that shine, with wisdom forged in fire, with discernment that no one can manipulate. You've paid a price to get here, and now it's your time to harvest. And I know, part of you is still healing. You're still unpacking the trauma, still trying to make sense of how people could treat you the way they did. You gave love and got lies in return. You showed up when no one else did, and got ghosted when you needed them most. You extended grace to people who would have let you drown if the roles were reversed, and you're still carrying those memories in the quiet chambers of your heart. But let this be healing for you. God saw it all. He saw what they did when no one was watching. He saw the conversations they had behind your back. He saw the betrayal, the jealousy, the manipulation, the spiritual attacks disguised as relationships. And he kept the receipts. He didn't forget, but he didn't expose it immediately either, because your growth was more important than their punishment. And now that you've grown, now that your heart has healed enough not to retaliate, now comes the justice. But it won't look like what you imagined. It won't be about people falling. It will be about you rising into purpose, rising into joy, rising into a version of yourself that was hidden beneath years of pain and pressure. Because when God restores, he doesn't just give back what you lost. He gives it back multiplied, upgraded, sanctified. Don't be surprised when you start receiving blessings that don't make sense. Divine connections, open doors, unexplainable peace, unusual favor. It's not coincidence, it's not karma, it's restoration. It's the kingdom's response to your obedience, your patience, your faithfulness, when it would have been easier to quit. You see, the victory is already written, and it's not a small win, it's total transformation, not just externally, but internally. You're not just going to look different, you're going to think differently. You're going to speak differently. You're going to love without fear and walk without shame, because the labels they tried to place on you no longer stick. The trauma they used against you no longer defines you. You are free. You're free from the identity they tried to give you. You're free from the fear that used to paralyze you. You're free from the cycles that tried to convince you this was as good as it gets. You're free because heaven has declared you victorious. And let me give you this call to action, not as a demand, but as an invitation. Don't shrink now. Don't question your worth now. Don't downplay what you've survived to make others comfortable. Own your story. Own your scars. Own the anointing that's rising on your life. It's time to step forward, not arrogantly, but unapologetically. You've been silent long enough. You've played small long enough. This is not the season to blend in. This is the season to walk boldly, not because of who you are, but because of who sent you. You didn't get here by chance. You were carried here by grace. And now the same grace is pushing you forward, not for performance, not for applause, but for purpose. There's something you carry that this world needs. There are lives tied to your obedience. There are generations waiting for you to take your rightful place. So rise, not just emotionally, not just spiritually. Rise in power, rise in truth, rise in destiny. Because this is your moment. You've cried the tears, you've fought the battles, you've stood through storms that would have crushed others, and now the heavens are declaring, it's your time, time to be seen, time to be heard, time to be honored. And those who tried to touch you, they'll stand on the sidelines watching the glory of God shine through your life, not because you sought revenge, but because you stayed obedient. So lift your head, chosen one. The victory is already yours. The crown didn't come easy, but it fits you perfectly. You are exactly who God said you are, and that's why they couldn't touch you. Let's go deeper now, because you've probably asked yourself this question more than once. Why did they come after me? Why was I the target? Why did I face so many betrayals, emotional attacks, spiritual warfare, and unexpected losses? Why me when I was only trying to love right, do right, and walk in peace? And the answer might seem simple, but it holds deep spiritual weight. You were chosen, and chosen ones carry light. And when your light starts to flicker, especially in dark places, it exposes what others have worked hard to hide. It wasn't personal at first, it was spiritual. You have to understand that your mere presence agitates spirits that have been comfortable for years. You didn't ask to be a disruptor, but that's what you became. Not by force, but by frequency. You walk into rooms and something shifts. You speak and conviction starts to stir. You show love, and suddenly people are faced with the truth of their own wounds, their own hypocrisy, their own hidden agendas. They hated you, but they didn't even know why. They envied you, but they couldn't explain it. They smiled in your face while praying for your failure, not because of who you were, but because of what you carried. This is the paradox of being chosen. You didn't pick the fire, but the fire picked you. You didn't ask for the anointing, but it rested on you anyway. And with that divine favor comes spiritual resistance, not just from the enemy, but from people who are still ruled by their own unhealed shadows. People fear what they don't understand, and they often attack what they secretly admire but cannot control. That's why they tried to bring you down through manipulation. That's why they tried to distort your image. They couldn't handle your purity, your strength, your consistency, because you represented something they had lost in themselves, a connection to the divine, a conscience, a reminder that light still lives. But let's look even deeper. Why did God allow the attacks? Why the loneliness? Why the tests that broke you open in places no one else could see? Because pressure reveals purpose. Fire refines what cannot be burned, and isolation becomes the womb of transformation. In the paradoxical laws of the Spirit, being set apart often begins with being misunderstood. God had to hide you for a time, not to punish you, but to protect what He was building in you. He kept you in places that looked like rejection, but were actually sanctuaries for your preparation. He allowed relationships to fall apart, not because He wanted you alone, but because He didn't want you surrounded by voices that couldn't speak to your destiny. People see isolation as abandonment, but heaven sees it as alignment. You had to be pulled away so you could hear clearly, so your ears could tune in to divine instructions without the static of public opinion, so your identity could be rooted in truth, not praise, not attention, not performance, just truth. And in those hidden seasons, something began to awaken in you. You started seeing the patterns. The way people treated you wasn't always about you. It was a mirror reflecting their inner conflicts. You were simply the trigger. Your confidence revealed their insecurity. Your generosity exposed their greed. Your forgiveness highlighted their bitterness. Your growth confronted their stagnation. Your light threatened their shadows. But this is what chosen ones must learn. Not everyone who walks with you is walking for you. And not everyone who smiles is sent by God. That's why you had to go through the betrayal. That's why the Judas had to show themselves. It wasn't for your destruction, it was for your clarity. And with that clarity comes another paradox. God will allow attacks that are designed to bless you. What they meant for evil, God turns for good. What they used to humiliate you, God uses to elevate you. What they tried to steal, God replaces with double. That's the divine reversal. The laws of heaven operate on a frequency the world cannot grasp. In the kingdom, loss precedes increase. Obscurity precedes honor. Breaking precedes birthing. And that's exactly what your soul has been doing all along, birthing something eternal. Because you weren't called just to survive. You were called to shake foundations, to carry out a mission written into your DNA before time began. You're not just a person with potential, you're a soul on assignment. And every attack, every heartbreak, every setback has been aligned with that assignment. You came here to break generational cycles, to speak life into places where death reigned, to carry a voice that cuts through illusion and brings light to the forgotten, to love with a purity this world forgot how to hold. That's why it's been hard. Not because you're weak, but because you're heavy with divine purpose. The attacks weren't about your past, they were about your future. The enemy saw where you were headed and tried to detour you with discouragement. He sent people to wound you in the exact places you were called to heal others. He tried to silence the voice that would one day bring freedom to thousands, and yet he failed. Because God authored your story, and He doesn't write unfinished endings. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are becoming, and the becoming is messy, it's painful, it's disorienting, but it's also sacred, it's holy ground, and only the chosen get to walk it. Now that you know why they came for you, now that you see the deeper layer behind the pain, what will you do with it? Will you shrink or will you rise? Will you cling to who you were or will you become who you were born to be? The world doesn't need another copy. It needs you, the real, raw, awakened version of you, the you, who knows what it feels like to be thrown away and still show up with love. The you who carries wisdom in your eyes and fire in your bones. The you who was never meant to fit in because you were created to stand out. This isn't about religion. This is about revelation. The revelation that you were chosen before you were ever wounded. That your soul came here with orders. That the pain had purpose. And that nothing, absolutely nothing, could ever touch what God placed within you. They tried, but you're still here. And now that you see clearly, you won't walk the same again. Now take a breath, chosen one. Not the breath of someone who's just surviving, but the breath of someone who finally understands. You were never abandoned. You were always anointed. What happened to you didn't disqualify you. It revealed. What broke others built you. What was meant to silence you refined your voice. You didn't get here by accident. You didn't just wander into favor. You were guided, protected, carried, even when you couldn't feel it, even when you thought God had gone silent, even when the people you loved the most turned cold, even when the night stretched too long and the pain felt unbearable. You were never alone. Heaven was holding your hand. And now you've entered a new season, not because everything suddenly feels perfect, but because you are no longer bound to the version of yourself that believed you had to earn your worth. You've remembered the truth. You were always set apart. Your value was never tied to how they treated you. Your worth wasn't buried under their betrayal. It was hidden in plain sight, waiting for this moment. For you to rise, fully awake in your identity. No longer reaching for validation. No longer asking small minds for permission. No longer shrinking in rooms you were sent to transform. The wilderness was never punishment, it was preparation. You've been prepared, not just to succeed, but to lead. Not just to speak, but to embody. not just to receive, but to carry glory. You've been refined so deeply that no counterfeit can fool you anymore. You've outgrown the need for applause. You've stepped out of the cycle of proving. You've crossed over into knowing. And what you now know can never be taken from you. You are the one the enemy couldn't destroy. You are the one the storms couldn't drown. You are the one the lies couldn't erase. You are the one who rose even when no one expected you to. You are the proof that divine protection is real. And I want you to hear this, not just with your ears, but with your spirit. You are the miracle, the walking contradiction, the one who carries evidence that God's hand is stronger than any generational curse, stronger than trauma, stronger than betrayal. You are what redemption looks like in real time. You don't have to chase anything. What's meant for you is on its way. You don't have to fight to be seen. God is your witness. You don't have to retaliate. The vengeance belongs to the Lord, and His justice is always precise. Your only job now? Stay aligned, stay true, stay ready. There are doors opening for you that no man can shut. Opportunities that were delayed, but never denied. People being divinely positioned to pour into you, not because you begged, but because your spirit is a magnet for heaven's flow. This is what you were preserved for. It's okay if you still feel the ache of what you went through. Healing isn't forgetting. Healing is remembering without bitterness. It's walking forward without dragging your past like a prison chain. You are not what happened to you. You are who God says you are, and who God says you are is untouchable in the spirit. Let them talk. Let them wonder how you made it. Let them sit in confusion, trying to figure out how you're still glowing after all you've survived. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Your light will speak for you. Your peace will speak for you. Your elevation will answer every unspoken question. You don't need to clap back. You're called forward. So move in quiet confidence now, not the kind that comes from ego, but the kind that comes from eternal truth. You are crowned in the unseen realm. You are robed in righteousness. You walk with unseen armies. You carry the kind of favor that can't be manufactured or stolen. And when the next challenge comes, and it will, remember, you've already been through worse and survived. This isn't about being perfect. This is about being prepared. Every scar has made you wise. Every tear has baptized your spirit. Every loss was a setup for a kingdom-level reward. God is not finished with you. In fact, He's just getting started. And if you've been wondering, when is it my time? When will it finally break open for me? Hear this. It's already begun. The shift has already taken place. The door has already unlocked. You just need to take the step. You don't need to wait for a sign. You are the sign. So step forward, chosen one. Step into the flow, step into the role, step into the room, step into the version of yourself that doesn't apologize for being anointed. You've got work to do, and heaven is backing you. And as you move forward, leave this echo behind in every space you exit. They couldn't touch me because I was set apart. Now go, walk with the wind of the Spirit at your back. You are called, you are covered, you are chosen, and that is forever.